Okay, great. So we're going to go back and analyze the beginning of the story of Elisha, right? We're going to go back in time a little bit to when Elisha first gets to the city of Yerichai. And the men of Yerichai tell Elisha their plight. The pasuk in Malachim Beis says, "Vayamru anshe ira Elisha." The men of the city said to Elisha, "Hine na maisha be'ir tov." The situation of the city is pleasant, kasher deni raya, like my master sees, gaimer, etc. Now the end of the pasuk actually finishes, but the water is bad and the land miscarries. Right? So the Gemara asks, "Hey, kivei achar demayim rayim, the eretz mishakelas. If the waters are so bad and the land is so unfertile, elamatay basa. So what's so good about this city?" So Amar Rav Chanan says a very fascinating statement. There's a kind of idea that a person, there's sort of a grace of a place on its inhabitants. A person has a sort of bias to seeing the beauty or the advantage of the place that he lives in. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, there are three graces that have a similar impact. Like the grace of a place on its inhabitants. The grace of a wife on her husband. Right, the grace of a purchased item on its buyer, right? Kind of, I think there's a concept in economics called the endowment effect, right? Which is kind of a similar idea, right? That like there's this sort of bias that a person evaluates an object that they actually own at a higher value than an object of the same exact object if they don't own it, right? So perhaps that's a related idea. But at any rate, there's a certain value, extra value a person places on the place that they live in, on their relationships, and on their items that they own.
Just a little insight on this. So, the commentators discuss, what's the reason for this? Why would Hashem make this happen? So, simply, one answer is that if people didn't have this, people would constantly be dissatisfied with everything they bought and wherever they lived and whoever they married, there would just be chaos, But another explanation the Maharsha says is that if you remember from the very first off of Sotah and also earlier, somewhere in the middle, I can't remember which stuff, but we discussed how these three things are all things that are preordained, right? Like Hashem decides in advance what you're going to own, what property you're going to have, and who you're going to marry. And so because Hashem, these things are preordained, Hashem, like and the reason why it's preordained is because there's something specific that you need to accomplish, right? There's certain like mission you have in that specific place with that specific person with those specific things. So Hashem therefore makes it that it looks beautiful to you, right? You sort of have a certain attraction to those things so that you will end up being in that place with those things with that person so that you can fulfill your mission. And this is very similar to actually what teaching the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov says, he interprets the pasuk, right? It says, the Baal Shem Tov interprets this pasuk sort of, out of not literally, which is Hashem guides the steps of man, and he makes it that the person wants that path, right? Hashem sort of like orchestrates it that like we think we're choosing where we want to go or what we want to do with our lives because we want it, right? Because like, oh, this is what what feels good to me. But really that's also being guided by Hashem because you have a mission there. There's something that you need to accomplish with that place that you end up. So these three things, because they're preordained, that's why Hashem has to sort of like put it in our minds this natural, attraction towards those things. And also there's halachic ramifications of this, right? We know from the Gemara, other places in the Gemara, that it actually says that you're allowed to, if it says if someone's getting married, you're allowed to say to the groom that his bride is really beautiful, even if you don't think she actually is, because to him, she does look beautiful, right? And the same thing actually it says about something somebody just bought. If someone just bought something, and of course, if it's going to cause them monetary loss or there's something seriously wrong with it, and there's some way they can fix it, you could tell them. But if they already bought it and it's too late, then you should tell them that whatever they bought is really beautiful, right? Don't criticize something somebody just bought, because to them it really does look attractive to them. And just one more idea here that the Ben Yahayada actually writes is that all three of these things actually apply to Hashem and the Jewish people. That Hashem sort of has this chen towards the Jewish people because we know we're called Hashem's wife. It says Varstichli La'ilam, which describes the Jewish people as like, he betrothed us. We're also called Hashem's, place, right? It says, Shachanti b'saichem, I'll dwell amongst you. Like this is like Hashem's place where he lives. We are where Hashem lives. And we're also called, an object that Hashem bought, right? Amzu Kanisa, right? Hashem acquired us as a nation. So we see that all three of these things are, describe the relationship that we have with Hashem, that Hashem sort of has this extra chain towards us as his people.
Wow, that's really beautiful.
So just a little bit about this small deicha v'min mekareves. So first of all, why the left hand versus the right hand? There's two basic explanations. One is that, left in general represents gevura, and right in general represents rachamim. So we're saying, the discipline comes with the left and the kindness is with the right. But also there's this idea that the right hand is for the majority of people, the stronger hand. And the idea is that there should be a stronger display of love, of drawing close, than the left, which is the weaker hand, which is the discipline. There's another idea about this. Here we see, on the one hand, we're saying that the discipline is to be with the weaker hand, right, the small. But on the other hand, we see that it comes first, right? First it's small daicha and then Yamin Mekareves, which is interesting. So just like a really beautiful sikha where the Rebbe talks about this, how he sort of compares this to, he talks about in general, like the process of education, right? The process of helping somebody grow or develop or progress. And, at what stage do you use discipline and harshness, a more harsh approach versus a more kind, generous approach. And he sort of talks about how there's this the Gemara seems to sort of contradict this, right? Here it seems to be saying, small you start off strict and then the love only comes afterwards. But we see in other places, for example, you see the story with Rabbah that it says that when he would teach his students, he would first tell a joke to sort of lighten up the mood and sort of open up his students' minds, and only then would he start teaching them, which sort of implies that he would start off in this sort of light, sort of friendly, approachable way, and then move into the more disciplinary role of the teacher. So he the Rebbe sort of brings in a few different, quotes from the Gemara there, but the basic idea he says there is that there's sort of three stages here. There's the kindness that you show initially, right? The background, the environment, the sort of the foundation that you set whenever you're trying to educate, right? And that foundation always has to be with love and acceptance and warmth, right? And that's sort of what Robert was trying to do when he told his joke, was sort of before he started the lesson, before he started actually teaching, he wanted to create this atmosphere and this foundation of love and acceptance and openness. But once you actually are teaching the lesson, right? Once you're actually in the mode of education, there's actually a teaching moment, right? Or there's actually something new you want the student or the child or whoever it is to learn. At that point, in order for someone to really learn something new, they need to first go through this process of letting go of whatever they were hanging on to before, right? They need to go through this process of gevura, of being pushed away in the sense of they need to sort of like, let go of however they were, whatever state they were in before, in order for them to be able to develop and grow and learn something that's really new. And in that process, there first has to be the gevura, first there has to be pushing away, teaching this person to put aside however they thought or however they behaved previously, so that they can open themselves up to whatever the teacher is trying to teach them. And only afterwards can there be this chesed, this bringing close of the student then being able to develop into a new person or learn a new idea or develop a new characteristic. So there's these three stages. There's the initial foundation, which has to be love and acceptance. But then once we're actually in the process of education itself, when you're actually communicating a certain lesson or trying to get someone to go through a process of growth, there has to be first that small daicha and then the Yamin Mekareves.